Welcome to the first of a new series of programs that will take us on a journey through a variety of subjects. We start with the first of 3 programs on an emotive theme, the innovative in healthcare. In this case, to an area that would once have been considered science fiction, but has now become scientific fact. Health and well-being is a vital aspect of everyone's life, and we need to keep pace with developments as new frontiers are constantly breached. We begin here at Bretforton Hall, a place much loved by Sir John Betjeman for its beautiful Gothic architecture. The hall is now watched over by English National Heritage, and it's the home and clinic of Dr. Sir Peter Guy Manners, an eminent research scientist, lecturer, and practitioner of complementary treatment in healthcare. His specialist field is cymatics and bioenergetic medicine, a treatment that places corrective, natural frequencies and harmonies into areas of the body that have been depleted due to illness, injury, or disease. I first heard Sir Peter at a lecture he gave a couple of years ago. I was electrified. Here was someone from the realms of medicine and science who, for the first time in my experience, could relate these important elements to not only the physical structure of the body, but also to the spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects. During the filming, I had the opportunity to explore the philosophy and continuing development of the therapeutic cymatic process with Sir Peter. I hope you too will find this introduction to cymatics as fascinating as I did. Join me now at the beginning of our discussion.
Machines, etc. But I don't think it's generally understood that sound can have a great potential on a healing therapeutic effect on the human body. So apart from sound registering on our hearing ability, how else can it affect us?
Well, I think that's been a common thought for a number of years because everyone associates sound with your ears, and beyond that no one has thought very much about it. Of course, the ears really are very secondary to what is transpiring. Sound transmits itself through substance. In other words, the sound goes literally through your body. Your body is composed of frequencies, and basically this is what sound is. Musicians don't like us saying this sometimes. They don't like us referring to music as frequencies, but never mind. They'll have to bear up with this for a time being. It's frequencies. Now, if within the body any of the frequencies are deficient in any way, and the music that you're listening to, we say in a concert hall, contains some of those frequencies, your body will absorb it. And if it absorbs it, your body likes it, your brain accepts it, and your mind says, well, this is wonderful music, this is beautiful, I can thoroughly enjoy it. And yet perhaps sitting in the seat alongside of you is someone else who is also listening to it. It's also traveling through their body, but their body is not deficient in what there is there. So their body is offering a kind of resistance to it. And it's the resistance of the body that upsets the brain, upsets the mind, and they say, oh, good gracious, this is a terrible racket, how much longer is this going on? And the idea that people of high culture and high learning like highfalutin music, and the slightly lesser ones like the popular music, and a little bit lesser down like the rock and roll, there's a lot of stupid, idiotic nonsense because it's nothing of the sort.
Oh, I'm glad about that.
Because all you've got to do is to take whatever, it's the frequencies that are important, it's the rhythm that the people don't like. All you've got to do is to take it out of one rhythm. Again, musicians don't like us talking about this. Taking it out of one rhythm and put it into another. We actually did this with one patient when we were in our very, very early experimental stages of this. And we found that she was deficient in various frequencies in the body. And a piece of music by the Beatles, we all remember the Beatles, called Eleanor Rigby, contained a lot of the frequencies that she required. So it was in the research laboratory, not in our clinic, of course. So we put it on, and within a few seconds she said, oh my goodness, I can't stand that. Oh, it is terrible. Oh, it is awful. So I said, well, I beg your pardon, we switched it off. But in the same village, well, it's not our village, the next village, we have someone who rearranges music. He does it for, I think, for the BBC and ITV and all these sort of people. Anyhow, I went round to him and I took round Eleanor Rigby on a tape and I took Mozart on a tape. And I said, look, I want you to change these over. So he said, what exactly do you mean? I said, well, I want Ella Rigby in Mozart. I said, what you do with Mozart, I don't mind. But put Eleanor Rigby into Mozart. I said, can you do it? Well, he said, yes, I can do it. I said, well, when can I have it? He said, this evening, 6 o'clock, if you like. I said, that's fine. I went back at 6 o'clock and brought it back and put it on. And she said, oh, that's better. That is really beautiful. It was exactly the same piece of music, but it was into the rhythmic form of Mozart. So therefore, it is the body that is the most important factor and not the ears. The ears are secondary.
I have to admit I've never heard of the word cymatics before. So how and when did it originate?
It's now known as cymatic therapy. That's its known word. Because in the early days, we called it audio sonics. And people got this confused with ultrasonics, which was quite normal and quite natural for them to do. So we withdrew that terminology and called it cymatics. But the word cymatics is a Greek word meaning pressure or waves. Well, it is waves, it's waves of sound. But we used it in respect to the researchers who had gone before us and prepared the way for what we are doing now. I mean, if it hadn't been for the people who had done the research in the first place, we would never be in the position in which we are today to be able to use it as a therapy. And therefore, Dr. Hans Jenny of Basel in Switzerland, who was not a medical doctor, he was a geologist, but he was finding and discovering that the layers of rock in the mountain ranges of the planet were formulated by different frequencies and pressure rates. And so therefore, I mean, his information led us a long way into what we were doing, combined with many others. And we put all these people together. I mean, because we had Dr. Bronner of Munich in Germany, we had Professor Gavot at the Sorbonne in Paris, who found that he could split concrete with sound. We had several other people who were working in smaller capacities, and none of them were working actually in medicine itself. What we have basically done is to bring all these things together and mold it into one frequency, which is now turned into a therapy, and it's now worldwide.
And what led you into this field of research?
Oh, that's very easy. I suddenly realized as a student that, and I'm sure all the doctors will forgive me because they know it's perfectly true, that we seem to be creating far more things than we were curing. And I think the reason for that is we were like, I think the easiest way to refer this is like Madame Curie and radium. We can extract the 1 ounce of radium and give it to the patient, but the doctor gave them the ton of rock to swallow, and they had to get rid of the ton of rock. And I think this is what it is. I mean, and when the drug scene happened to us, we thought it was a gift from God. I mean, and it certainly was. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's got a long, long way to go yet. I mean, drugs are a wonderful thing, but the point is there are so many side effects from drugs. Yes. And if we can copy or create or reinstate something that will do exactly the same thing as the drug will do without the side effects, then we're a long way towards improving the whole aspect of medicine. I mean, we know instinctively that pain is a registering factor telling you there's something wrong. But we also know, and I mean all the doctors will agree with this, that 75% of the body's ability is wasted on the toleration of the pain. Yes. And the healing is pushed back in the background. It takes longer. And also the theory of pain is basically very, very simple. It's very complicated, the person that's putting up with it, but basically, honestly, it's simple. It's a two-way sort of telephone system. We had a very good example of this with a hospital up in Sheffield, we were asked to go up to demonstrate this technique when we're in the early days of finding how it worked. And the hospital, it was a small hospital devoted to miners who had been caught in roof collapses where the things had given way. So that it was all crush injuries. Yes. And now there's not very much you can do about it apart from cleaning it up and just waiting for time and giving them some drugs to alleviate the pain. That's all you can do, really. And when I went in with this box of tricks, because that's what it looked like in those days, and this thing which in those days looked like a hammer, and these very, very tough big miners lying in those beds there, they took one look at me, and I am not going to repeat on this program exactly what they said to me. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to get very far with these men. And I was just going to say, oh, well, we better give it up, I suppose. And I came down the end, and there was a young boy. He couldn't have been any more than about 18. And he said, I don't know whether he felt sorry for me, or whether he was, what should I say, thinking a bit deeper. I don't know quite what it was. But he said, I'd like to try it. And I said, well, good, that's fine. So, and he had a crushed leg from about just above the knee right down, and it was really a horrible mess. And anyhow, so I removed the bedclothes from the top up near the hip joint, and so he said, aren't you going to move the dressing? I said, no, no, no. I said, I'm not interested in what's happening down there. Oh, he said, aren't you? I said, no, no. And I put the appliance on the nerve centers at the top of the thigh and round the hip. And immediately I put it on. Of course, I put it on particular nerve centers, which in those days we couldn't even use by name because the medical profession hadn't accepted it. It was meridian points. We called them null points because we had to be polite. And so we put it on a null point. And within a matter of a minute or two, I mean, his face, from being drawn and painful, suddenly started to brighten up. And he said, the pain is stopping. The pain is stopping. And he started shouting at the top of his voice. Well, it wasn't many seconds before the whole of the rest of the ward was like a madhouse. They all say, well, I'd better try it. I'd better try it. And they're all over the place. Well, anyhow, we realized by that by transmitting it in. Now, we weren't healing by this process. The body was doing the healing. That's what we had to wait for. But what we were doing was giving the body the ability to be able to do its job by easing down the pain. And the idea and the concept was comparatively simple. Of course, it's not as simple as that now, because it's moved into much more involved sort of ways, and the whole thing has got bigger. Yes. But the concept is there just the same.
On one of my trips to Bretforton Hall, I arrived as an unexpected patient with a painful and sprained wrist. This was my opportunity to experience cymatics. After making the appropriate computations for the problem area, Sir Peter put the applicator on my wrist, and within a couple of seconds the pain had completely disappeared. Needless to say, I was suitably impressed. I had one more short treatment the next day, followed by a brief but expert manipulation of the wrist, leaving it with full and painless mobility. Let's join Sir Peter now in the clinic with 1 or 2 patients and see some treatment in progress.
As you notice, our patients are very relaxed. There's a waiting room that pays for relaxation, perfectly relaxed, and they're always anxious to come in for their treatment.